Welcome, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Sorry for the delay in connecting. Uh, Today is going to be a little bit different, kind of almost like a little experiment. Um, so, just as a background, uh, welcome to Frugal Science. I'm first curious as we start every day. Any new mentors that have joined that haven't had the chance to introduce themselves before? You could raise your hands. Um, Actually, one thing that you could do is all mentors that are connected, if they could raise their hands electronically, that way we will have a chance of assigning people to different teams. Uh, the Today is a kind of a working session. So far we have heard about several sets of stories. I'm already seeing lots of mentors connected, which is very valuable. We will break up into three subgroups. One is going to be around health, environment, and ecology. And then the third one will be education. And any mentors are free to go to any of the breakout rooms. But the project teams that are working in these spaces, and I'm hope is that your project is focused amongst these three themes. Uh, so first of all, just in your team, figure out which breakout room you'll be going to. When we do reach the breakout room, there will be a few mentors who can introduce themselves a little bit if they haven't had the chance to. And I think there would be a few mentors who can do a little bit of juggling. So I'll be in the health room to start with, and then eventually I'll move into uh, the other rooms. And then I'm wondering, Emmanuel, if you could be kind of hosting the environmental and the ecology room. And I'm also curious on the education side, who might be willing to act as a little bit of a coordinator. Uh, I don't know whether, Provin, would you be uh, on the education side of the story, or anybody else who might want to do the juggling on the education discussion room? Any mentors? Yeah. Okay. So Fabian and Provin might be the two on the education side. Uh, and what we want to achieve for today's goal is to have teams to have a chance to talk to each other. So every team should have say 3 or 4 minutes on the progress that they have made and where they are stuck and the kinds of challenges that they're facing. And when you hear that from different teams, you will get an intuition and first feel you're all in the same boat. And some of you might have made more progress and others not. It also is quite motivating, and one of the ways that we will lead the sets of discussions is how to reach to a point where you say you have something that you can quantitatively say proves or disprove an idea. And many mentors will play a role in this, that when you list out what do you want to achieve in the next couple of weeks, they will provide feedback on both how to achieve it and how to quantify it. How do you know that you've met your goals? But this will be really much more on the brainstorming side of the story. And we will do this for different teams. If one team is quite advanced, you can use them as a case study. This is really an exercise in coordination. So any questions before we jump into the breakout rooms? Today's sessions will be very free flowing, but we want to emphasize if you have pinpointed the biggest challenge you face in making progress on your project. And so then we can identify those. Uh, and then I'm hoping that all three rooms will have a few mentors. Uh, any questions before we break out into three rooms? Health, ecology and environment, and education. Um, okay, so let's do this
Sounds great.
experiment.
All right.
Tyler, you should lead of how we get teleported to these three rooms. Oh, and then by the way, it's 12:37. Around sharply around maybe one. What time do we end? We usually end around 1:40,
150. Yeah.
1:50. So I would say around 1:40, please come back to the main room. And Tyler, maybe you can bring people back, right? So
That's
keep a
right.
clock there. 1:40 sharp, we will come back. And then 10 minutes, we will just do a discussion on what we learn by listening to each other. So I see Zach just joined. We're breaking out into 3 rooms: health, ecology, and education. And any of the mentors, and especially, you don't have to, there's no official title of a mentor. If you have experience in a given space and you feel you want to chime in and help lead the conversation, and then make sure for the mentors to provide all teams a little bit of a time so they can describe their progress and describe their challenges. If you can pinpoint and document what challenges each teams have, then we can go back and try to work on those specific ones to provide the sets of resources. So Tyler, tell us the logistics of how do we teleport?
Yes, sounds great. So I'll be figuring this out right now on the fly. We'll see how this goes. And another thing, this goes for the teams as well. I would say teams, as you're showing the stuff that you've done, this is not a presentation where you're trying to make it look good or anything. Like really, this is nitty gritty, working
Use your
down through the
Notion pages.
details. Yeah, using your Notion pages.
Use
I'll
your
enable
Notion page as a lab notebook to just share the progress you have made or what you've been thinking about.
Exactly.
This is a
So
feedback session. It is not about the style of how you present. It really is about where are you beginning and have you begun?
we'll wait just a sec for everyone to jump in. How are the breakouts? Good? Productive?
Great.
They were great.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. I have to say that was just absolutely incredible. We could have gone on for hours. What we'll do is in the next 10 minutes, maybe people can just summarize meta lessons. I think what I wanted to do, and I'm just also curious if somebody in the subgroups can just briefly describe what happened, but it might be interesting to just share meta lessons because many of you have not done brainstorming sessions with each other. So I don't know if other groups want to say a few words so that the health folks can listen. Any lessons that you learned along the way on organizing your teams, the work that's happening, and then we will go through between those same breakout rooms. So we can start with the ecology environment side. Any comments from that session? Were you all able to go through the entire teams? Things that you all learned that are helpful for your project now and you were not thinking about? I'm just curious how things went. Go ahead, Harshit.
So one thing that I would like to put is, after the session that we had in ecology, we need more than one mentor, at least more than one expertise for any team I've seen. So for example, my team is the ant family, which requires, we want to develop an app to identify ants and collect the data on ants across space and time. We also need someone who is an ant expert. So we need more than one expertise and maybe more than one mentor.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I've been a little bit slow on and kind of getting to a point as teams are maturing, on the Excel sheet, probably I'll try doing this tonight. This is the biggest thing on my task, is to make sure that I've assigned the kind of mentors that can engage with that team even offline. They might not join here, but they can engage offline. So I think that's on my to-do plate. And then again, I think it's very valuable for you yourself to also reach out to individuals locally. I know many teams have done that locally because sometimes a local context is also important. I mean, the entomologist that I was going to introduce and bring on board would have a certain aspects, but might not have the local context. And I think local context is important. So you will all hear, and I think this is also true for mentors, because mentors had reached out that if they had 1 or 2 teams now assigned to them, the reason we wanted to do this type of a display a couple of times is that mentors now have a chance, and especially the regular mentors can choose and connect with any number of teams, but they might have a preferred choice because of a project that they're working on. So that's a great point, Harshit. Other comments from the ecology and the other teams? I'm most interested in if people can highlight some meta lessons, because then we will continue doing these brainstorming meetings together collectively in these subgroups. Otherwise, we might do them in a smaller groups. But I'm just curious, any other meta lessons from other groups? Go ahead, Rishi.
Yeah, I guess the key we felt while going around with the discussions, even today's and even team internal discussions, was to have a clearly defined problem statement, because ecology itself and once you have that problem statement defined, also have an end goal in mind. So one of the things that we're gonna try and do is, once we have some of the data collected, kind of try and engage with institutes or corporations in an open innovation model kind of way, where early insights can lead to potential collaborations, and they would have the necessary infrastructure to kind of do more measurements, and that way we can build on very early steps that one takes and kind of keep building on. So I guess approaching the same problem for two different sides, end goal in mind, but starting with a clearly defined purpose, problem statement.
Yeah, and I think what I heard was, go ahead, Emmanuel. Yes.
One surprise thing for me was, and beautiful thing is, and particularly in the last discussion we had, is suddenly you discover how much expertise there is in the group among the students that you don't know about.
Absolutely.
You know,
That's why I wanted to do this. Yes.
And it also goes in stereo, because we talk and then there's the chat that's running at 100 miles an hour with superb ideas.
Yeah, no, I think this is why I want to make sure that we are a community. We are running this as a class because there are no defined structures of learning other than class. But this is really a peer network of curious people who are passionate. And this is why I want to make sure that you need to belong to one team, but in these sessions, everybody's brain gets focused on that one problem that's being presented. And yeah, I think it's a fantastic point, Emmanuel, because eventually also the lived experiences, we had a conversation in which somebody shares a personal experience that completely changes the context of the problem itself, because many folks are actually facing the problems that we are trying to solve. And it completely, that personal reflection is so important. I mean, it builds the kind of empathy that otherwise you can never have for a given problem. Any other meta lessons? Cici, I know you had a comment. Anybody else on the education side? How was the session? Did you all enjoy it?
Well, if no one else is going to say anything, I'll say something. Dr. Provine had to leave early, but really impressive set of projects. There was one missing that happened to be my own project, which was a little embarrassing. I saw one person who I knew was a member, but I couldn't get him to speak up. But if I had a general message, and I've already said it to them, is that now we got to focus. We had a lot of very terrific range of problems to be addressed, but time is short. And if you can make significant progress on any one problem, that's good going. And the other thing was you've got to get numbers. I was recommending to the group the Heilmeier questions. I suspect, Manu, you know what the Heilmeier questions are.
Yeah, you should describe that, actually. Fabian, you should describe that.
Oh, well, I did to my group. They don't want to hear it again, but since you asked, Heilmeier is the inventor of the liquid crystal display. And amongst other things, he went on to be director of DARPA. DARPA is a funding agency, and they have to assess project proposals and decide who to fund. And he said, if you're going to present a project proposal, there are a set of questions that you have to answer. And you can Google those and find out what they are. And I think they're very well chosen. Again, the name is Heilmeier, Heilmeier. I see John Beale is there. He might like to comment on that too. No, he didn't. All right.
Yeah. Any comments from the health panel, folks that were in the health group? Any meta lessons? Go ahead, Iqbal. Oh, you're muted, Iqbal.
Yeah. So I think I can like talk about a couple of things that we talked about. One is I mean, even if the problem looks very big and it has multiple dimensions and multiple problems to work on. So what Manu suggested, and I agree, is that we can pick up one problem that is very essential and that might as well be used in other kinds of problems as well. So for example, one such problem that I think a lot of health projects will encounter is how do we ensure sample is not contaminated? How do we ensure like the sample holder or whatever the surface that we are using to do analysis is not contaminated? I mean, in the project that I'm working on, it could be any other antibodies or any other antigens. Yeah, and how do we look at the specificity versus sensitivity rubric and make something that sort of falls in the middle and it's not too specific, not too sensitive. We also talked about, I think, how do we make better filters? But I think the crux is how do we find out tiny problems in the middle of bigger problems that are sort of general to multiple projects.
And I think just to emphasize, and as Fabian said, we only have a couple more weeks left. I don't even know when the semesters end, but of course, these projects will have a long lifetime. The goal is this is an initiation. But one of the things that I want to do is the sense of team really changes when you accomplish small things. You will see in your team dynamics, like one team literally had some physical prototypes and everybody's eyes lit up because there was something. I mean, you could see something that has been created by the group. It's very important to choose your, and don't worry too much about the larger scale, because of course, it's perfectly okay failing terribly on a very important problem. Success on not so important as a problem, it's okay, but failing on a really important problem is perfectly fine. But narrow down and then use Notion as a way to share. And again, let's use the class as a resource as well, because there is many number of people here who have lived experiences that are very different from each other. So you should consider that as team members as well. On my end, I'll finish this mentor list today. So I think you will all get sets of emails, and then you should immediately reach out to those individuals as well. And then on the other hand, we will continue these brainstorming sessions. So in the health, we could only finish half of the project. So we will continue that. And one of the ideas would be is for the next week as well, try to ping your teammates for them to join so that you have a good brainstorming session around this. And then many people had asked, I will put my own office hours this week, again, Wednesday and Thursday. Any mentors who have some time on one-on-one meetings, if you could, whatever office hours you care about, you can add, and then teams that can adapt to that time. I think we'll be flexible to the mentors, but this would be the one-on-one engagement time for the teams. And then we'll post these Excel sheets so that people can fill in on first come, first serve basis. Okay, on that note, I think we'll say bye and we will see you in another day. And let's continue this on Discord. And then on Thursday, I'll also kind of define a little bit about for the end of the class, what is the kind of milestone that we want to hit and what would be the logistics of us in terms of presentations, because if those dates are pinned down, it'll also act as a ticking clock, because right now it feels like, oh, the semester will be over when, but when we put a date on it, you would know in how much time you have what we are trying to accomplish. And of course, that's just a milestone. It doesn't change the dynamics of the groups moving forward, but it's valuable to have that milestone. On that note, please vote. For the people who are in the US, it's a very important election. Please, please, please vote. In some sense, I'm thinking about canceling the class on November 3rd to just give people a chance to vote and have another time. But I know some of you have the right to vote. So if you do have the right to vote, please, please, please vote. And many of you who are watching from far, please call your friends who might be in the US and ask them to vote. It doesn't matter who they vote for, but please, please, please vote. This is a global, this election will have a tremendous impact on what happens on the planet for the next 4 years. So I'm not advocating for anything other than just saying, please vote, which I think I'm allowed to in a teaching class. So on that note, we will say bye, and we will see you on the other side. It's a very stressful week for all of us. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you.